Today is December 6, 2011. Welcome to Toronto Debating Society. Today's debate is a cross-exam debate, and the topic is Canada needs a flat income tax. I will now invite the Prime Minister, Adrian, to come to the podium and speak for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The resolution before the House today is Canada needs a flat income tax. The resolution is defined as follows. Canada, the country of Canada under the jurisdiction of the Income Tax Act, requires something because it is very important. A flat income tax, a system of taxation where one tax rate is applied to all income for corporations and all income above one deduction for individuals. There are 3 reasons why we believe Canada needs a flat income tax. The first reason is that the current system is too complex. It leads it to being too expensive, too unmanageable, too wieldy, and too costly for governments to run and administer, as well as people to pay for the tax advice. For example, the latest estimate for the cost of running the tax system is anywhere from $18.9 to $30 billion, and this was in 2005 by the Frontier Center for Public Policy. But more importantly, the complexity of the tax system means that people need tax lawyers, tax accountants, and other professionals to get the full benefit of the tax system. And this skews the access of the tax system. Those people who can afford to pay for those professionals get the most out of the system. People with generally higher incomes, higher levels of education, and more disposable income. It is one way where certain segments of the population tend to get richer and certain corporations tend to get richer because they have the ability to make the most of the complexity of the current tax system. With a flat tax system, all of that is removed. You have one postcard-sized return for individuals, you have one postcard-sized return for corporations. The second reason that we need a flat tax is the current tax system is unequal. If you are single or married, have children or don't have children, work a Monday to Friday 9-to-5 job, or have your income based on stock, dividends, or capital gains, the taxes that you pay are different. And funnily enough, but people who work Monday to Friday, 9-to-5, earning a normal salary, the 99% of us, to coin a phrase, are the ones that get dinged. People who make their money from stock, dividends, capital gains, investments, and other forms of income like that tend to be richer, tend to pay less tax. And that isn't really, it's not equal. And with going to a flat tax system, all of that is removed. Income is taxed at the same level. In 1962, the Carter Commission on Taxation said that a buck is a buck, and it should be taxed like that. So regardless of whether you make your money, flipping shares or flipping burgers, you should be taxed at the same rate. The third reason is that a flat tax will help Canada's economy. Economically speaking, in light of the Euro crisis, in light of the United States having their economic difficulties, in light of the world having economic difficulties, it's taking a toll on our country. Our deficits are still high, growth is still sluggish, and unemployment is stagnant. A flat tax is required because it will spur economic growth. Hong Kong is one of the best known examples of a flat tax regime, and their economy right now is currently growing at 7.1% in the first quarter of 2011 as measured by their Census and Statistical Division. Russia, which implemented a flat tax, the first year showed an increase of 25.2% in personal tax revenue. The second year increased by 24.6%, and in the third year it increased by 15.2%. Numbers like that would mean that the government of Canada, if it implemented a flat tax, would have $50 billion more to spend. And finally, Stats Canada, the Social Policy Stimulation Database, has also done a study assuming a balanced budget, increasing expenditure at the rate of inflation and population growth, and reducing the deficit by $6 billion a year, they calculate that a flat tax would be viable between 19 and 20%. So, Madam Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House, lower overall taxes, increase funds to reduce the deficit, balanced budget, and spending that matches population growth and inflation, and possibly an extra $50 billion in revenue that we can spend on social programs or anything that the government sees fit. For all of these reasons, plus the fact that it reduces, that it's more equal, and that it reduces the complexity of this tax system, we beg to propose.
Thank you, Adrian. So let's welcome our Leader of Opposition, Jim, for 2 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Prime Minister. I'll deal with some of the most egregious claims that you make. You claim that there's a proposal that if flat tax is made at 20%, then everything will be covered. How do you come to terms with that when the current federal and provincial tax rate in Ontario is currently 20%?
Well, that's the difference between what's known as the tax rate and the effective tax rate. For example, the tax rate for people who make over $100,000, say, is 29%.
This is on the minimum of people.
You asked me the question, let me answer.
But I don't want you to go off too far into this.
Well, my point is that...
Can you answer the question, please?
My point is that the numbers out there are what people are supposed to pay, but with deductions and whatnot and everything like that, what it ends up is that people pay a lot less. So the average tax rate is really a misnomer, because average people aren't paying that.
No, there's nothing to do with the average tax rate. This is the actual federal and provincial tax rate is 20.05%. Thank you. Can you tell me how many provinces and territories there are in Canada?
There are 10 provinces and 30 territories.
Correct. And how many different variations are there in taxation in the provinces?
Alberta, I believe, has a flat tax at the provincial level.
There are actually 13. Thank you. Can you tell me if all of these provinces have different taxation processes, how are they going to implement a flat tax across Canada? Because obviously each province will want different amounts.
The definition of the debate, as I recall it, was governed by the Income Tax Act of Canada. There's only one Income Tax Act, and there's only one Federal Income Tax Act, and that's what the debate is referring to. What the provinces decide to do is totally up to them, but that's not the scope of the debate.
Also, it's just the federal tax that you're talking about.
As the definition
says. But the provincial taxes will still be allowed to vary. So how is that still a flat tax when provinces have variable taxes?
Again, I would remind the Leader of the Opposition to refer back to the definition as governed by the Income Tax Act of Canada.
So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. It isn't actually a flat tax for Canada. It's a flat tax for the federal part of the taxes for Canada. The provinces have no say in this. They will just go off and carry on doing their graduated taxes at very different rates. And this is the Prime Minister who stood up here and said, this is going to make taxation simpler. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister obviously doesn't realize that in Canada, there are provinces involved in taxation. And when you do your taxes, you have to do a federal and you also have to do a provincial tax. Now, what the Prime Minister is trying to convince you of is that a federal tax at flat rate will work. Well, it isn't something that is going to work in isolation. It's still the provinces that are part of Canada, and I'm not sure how a flat tax will work here for the federal and then still have variation on provincial taxes, and it becomes a lot cheaper. You'll still need all these accountants, all these lawyers to get the provincial part worked out properly. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister really doesn't come up with any sound arguments on this part. And as for having a postcard-sized piece of paper to work out your taxes, okay, well maybe that will work for Canada, but sorry guys, hello, you've got to do the provincial stuff as well. Now, I was on the understanding that Canada needs a flat income tax. What the government here is talking about is a flat tax for corporations and for individuals. I'm not sure where this comes from. I'd also like to point out that the Prime Minister brought up the fact that Russia, wonderfully, when they brought in a flat tax, suddenly their economy boomed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, has anyone looked at the Russian economy? What's it based on? It's based on oil. As oil goes up and down, it's nothing whatsoever to do with a flat tax. Look at Poland, ladies and gentlemen. That's an equally valid example. Poland has gone through the communist process. They've come into Western Europe. They're part of the European Union. They did not take a flat tax as part of their economic direction. That's still graduated, and they are the only country in Europe that have not even gone under something relating to the economic bust of the last few years. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, the government's trying to say flat tax equals a booming economy. It has nothing to do with that. It's actually still independent. There's no expert out there that says there is a correlation between a flat tax and a booming economy. Let me bring up a few points. The benefits, so-called benefits, my colleague will bring up specific examples when he discusses this later. But things like countries like Estonia, which was a darling of the flat tax economists, they did exactly like Russia, and they actually lost 15% of their GDP a few years ago. Nothing necessarily to do with flat tax, ladies and gentlemen, but it's all about the economy and where the world, how the world is relating to their particular economy. Another thing, the Prime Minister is talking about how terrible it is that the rich will, under the current system, remain rich, but under a flat tax they will pay their fair share. Ladies and gentlemen, if you analyze what it is that the current tax system does for a poor person and a rich person, flat taxes actually increase the amount of money that a rich person will get if they're earning over $1 million, they will actually become richer. So the Prime Minister's arguments are null and void. As I mentioned in the cross-examination, my third point, if you have a sophisticated economy relating to different provinces and the federal government, you're not going to be able to get a flat tax across everyone that needs it, across the country. And also, ladies and gentlemen, my final point is, in Canada, it is a sophisticated economy, and the government needs micromanagement of the economy to allow for various deductions to encourage or discourage various selling or various aspects of how the country runs its economic processes. So, ladies and gentlemen, please vote against the resolution this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for your arguments. Now I will welcome Reagan for his cross-examination for 2 minutes and his thoughts for 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that was an interesting...
Are you going to hit me with that?
No, I'm not going to hit you with that. Though I'd encourage you one day to try and read it, because you were talking about a sophisticated economy, and you were talking about how Canada needs, the government needs a tool that is 1,500 pages long, plus another 900 pages of regulations, with run-on sentences, clauses, sub-clauses, and not a period in sight, to help control its economy. Why does the government have to be involved in the economy? Don't we have a capitalist economy? Shouldn't we just let free markets decide? Why should the government be one to pick the winners and the losers in the economy?
According to Plato, when there is an income tax, the just man will pay more and the unjust man will pay less on the same amount of income. Of course, there's been taxes around forever, sir, and the government of the day, whether you elect them or whether they just decide to take over the country or various tribes, they want your money to pay for their wars, to pay for schooling your children, my children, to run the roads, and in our case in Ontario, to fill the schools and to have a good time.
What the opposition leader might clarify why flat tax can't collect the revenues necessary to ensure that we can all have a good time, whether it be firing off nuclear rockets in Afghanistan or sending our children to school with swimming pools that are clean.
Sorry, was that a question?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord, I disagree. And furthermore, if, as you say, it's so complex to fill out your forms, I would recommend you, sir, to buy a DVD from Price Club or wherever you can get it off of the web and use that, because it takes about 25 minutes and all of that is contained on this DVD, and all you have to do is fill in all of your bits and pieces, your income and your deductions and your child's education and whether your child went, and it's all there, and it takes about 15 minutes. Thank you.
What the opposition leader has just provided, ladies and gentlemen, is a reason why Canada needs a flat tax and why all the provinces should also, once the federal government has adopted the flat tax, all the provinces should follow the federal government's lead. The truth of the matter is, if you need to use a software, whether you buy it from Price Club, Costco, Walmart, etc., and you need a computer, an iPad, or a smartphone to complete your taxes, i.e. to determine how much you should pay to the government, something is really wrong. And why is it? It's too complex, it's too difficult. Think of any other bill that you have to pay, any other payment you have to make that requires you to go through the rigmarole of either buying a software, going to H&R Block, or if you happen to have, you know, a more sophisticated financial position, hire tax lawyers at $850 an hour. Does this make any sense? Does this seem just? As I said earlier, here is the Income Tax Act as it stands. This is what the opposition wants to support. 1,500 pages of text that will make your eyes glaze over after reading the first page. As the Prime Minister said, a flat tax has many benefits. First and foremost is its simplicity. Let's get away from a tax return that's 200 pages, 50 pages, based on a CD, based on the internet, based on a book, and get it down to a postcard. And wouldn't that, think of all the time you would save. Time, by the way, that could be economically spent by the citizenry doing more productive and economically purposeful things, rather than sitting at home and filling out tax returns. The army of professionals that have a vested stake in maintaining the current system is humongous. There are literally thousands of tax lawyers, thousands of tax accountants, thousands of bookkeepers, thousands of people hired by H&R Block at minimum wage who garner their living and make their taxable income from a system that is can only be described as Byzantine and extremely complex. There's no reason why people should have to pay someone to determine how much they should have to pay the government.
You're here.
The proponents of the flat tax, and as proposed by the Prime Minister, helps to do away with all that. It's too bad there'll be tax lawyers who usually make $850 an hour having to find a new career, but that's so be it. Because the truth of the matter is, all that effort and all that time and all that money spent in supporting and administering and keeping the status quo could, as we said earlier, be better spent doing other things. Tax accountants and tax lawyers don't add any value to the economy. They're what economists call deadweight losses. And we say a flat tax will help get rid of the deadweight losses in the Canadian economy. Now, there was a mention about the provinces. The provinces, most provinces like Ontario, when it comes to Personal Income Tax Act, just charge a percentage or have a percentage of what the federal tax is, plus there's a surtax. So really, it would not be that if the province of Ontario and the federal government can harmonize the collection of a complex tax such as, I don't know, the HST, then certainly there could be harmonization at the federal and provincial level for Income Tax Act, for the Canadian Income Tax Act. So, in view of the foregoing, we suggest that this House pass this motion, bring us a flat tax. It's easier, it's clearer, it's more fair. Every dollar you make, you pay the same number of cents in taxes, and it allows for neutrality. The government cannot use the Income Tax Act as a political tool, and it also gets rid of all the complexity that's with this system as it is.
Now, please welcome Gerry, who will cross-examine the member of government, Reagan, and then tell us his thoughts for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the government. I would have brought my tome on flat tax, but I understand you don't have prompts up here, so I didn't bring anything. Sir, just for the audience's education, there are 27 countries currently that have flat tax, most of them being in the Eastern Bloc. Many of these Eastern Bloc countries are reducing their flat tax rates to, quote, compete with neighboring countries. Economists say that this will lead to financial instability. How do you answer this?
Each country has its own responsibility to manage its tax system, simply because there's a competition with some Eastern Bloc countries that have not had a very sophisticated history of developing a tax system.
Canada is on everybody's list, every single list that you can look at. Canada is on that list when you're talking about top countries of the world. Whether it's happiest nations, best economies, best education, Canada is right up there, always in the top 10. Okay? Now, as I looked at the list, I could not find one single country of those 27 that have flat taxes, including Hong Kong, sir, who are on that list. If Canada is so successful that they're on everybody's top list, then why do we need this flat tax, sir?
So we can go from number 10 to number 1.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm first going to offer 4 quick points of rebuttal, and then I'm going to give you a couple of arguments of my own. First of all, the Prime Minister said that Russia was one of the countries that had increased their economy when they introduced the flat tax. My colleague spoke about this briefly, and I'm just going to reinforce this. Of the 27 countries that introduced this flat tax, as I said, most were in the Eastern Bloc, former communist countries, who, as it turns out, have just dropped the idea of communism. So, isn't it strange that all of a sudden their economies go up and the government would have you believe this is as a result of introducing this flat tax? Most experts say nothing to do with that. There's no correlation. It's because they've changed government systems. Investors are flocking to invest in these new companies now. So that's number 1. Number 2, if a flat tax was introduced in Canada on corporations as well, and I didn't even think this was part of the debate, but nevertheless, if corporations are taxed flatly, most small businesses in Canada would disappear. They cannot be taxed at the same rate as the big corporations. It just will not, and will never work. The member said that the first thing that would happen is that all these tax lawyers would lose their jobs. Well, isn't that interesting? The first item after a flat tax is introduced is to put thousands and thousands of lawyers on the unemployment line. Wonderful. Wonderful start. Okay. Finally.
All the sympathy.
Finally, provinces were suggested as should be put under the flat tax system as well. This will never work. You cannot have the same tax system for Alberta with their oil situation, none of it with their native situation, and Ontario, which is an industrial center, an industrial and economic financial center. You have to have different tax systems for different situations. All right, now on to my arguments. My colleague stated that Canada does not need a flat tax, and this is part of the main part of the debate. Now I want you to focus on need. Have they told us, have they proven that Canada needs a flat tax? I think not. My colleague said that a flat tax would be unfair for Canadians and is definitely not needed in our already successful country. I'm going to give you an example. The average income before tax of a retired Canadian is $32,000. This is from Statistics Canada. Assuming a flat tax of 20%, which is the average that those 27 countries in Europe have as a tax rate, That's a tax of $6,400, leaving a person just over $25,000 to live on. Now I want you to look at the 14% of Canadians that make in excess of $300,000. So what does that mean to both of these people? It means to that person who's lost $6,400, maybe you can't put meat on his table. Okay? What does it mean for the person making $300,000? It means maybe a couple less options on his Porsche. Is this what we want for Canada? Is that fair? Is that equitable? I think not. My second argument. My colleague also talked about the different countries in Europe, mostly ex-communist countries. I'm going to choose one example, Latvia. At first, the flat tax looked really good for Latvia. Their economy went up 7.6%. They have a flat tax of 25%, by the way. But by that was in 2005. By 2008, their economy had fallen 10%. By 2009, a further 12%. Unemployment is over 9%. They have recently cut pensions of already pensioned people by 10%. They have reduced pensions of working people by 70%. They've also cut state salaries by 20%. All of this is to fix the mess that Latvia, with their flat tax system, has found themselves in. Canada does not need this mess or this system. Please vote against the revolution.
Now please welcome Adrian, who will be cross-examining the opposition member for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. A member of the opposition, in the definition, the government said that system of flat tax is a system of taxation where one tax rate is applied to corporations, and for individuals, all income above one deduction. And were you aware that was part of the definition when you went on about the Porsche and the heating fuel?
I was aware of what you said when you gave the definition at the beginning, yes?
Great, because of that, and the government, because of that, what it means is that if, for example, that senior citizen can deduct, say, the first $25,000 of their income, because they're allowed to do that under the definition, that would mean that no one is going to be starving, no one is going to be, impoverished, whatever. It means that they are sheltered and they are protected from the full effects of the flat tax.
Is there a question here, sir? Is there a question?
There was a question, you must have missed it.
Are you aware, sir, that a flat tax means a flat tax with no deductions? You said it yourself, no deductions. Now you're talking about deductions.
Mr. Member of the opposition, I'm sure we don't need to play the tape, but the resolution as defined, as the Speaker could make a judgment on, clearly states that for individuals it was all income above one deduction. And that was, again, you must have missed it. And the reason why we put that in there is because we realize that we don't want, starving seniors, being kicked out of their homes because of a flat tax. It is a version of a flat tax, and we defined it as such. I don't know why the opposition totally missed it, but
True
it is
flat tax
there.
rate is a system of taxation where one tax rate is applied to all income with no deductions or exemptions.
That is the definition you have, but that is not the government's definition. That is your definition, Madam Speaker.
No, that is not my definition. I couldn't make up something that good.
You're done.
You're done.
Oh, right.
Moving on to summations, and we'll welcome the Leader of Opposition for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. I can still use the term honourable for honourable members of government. However, to identify something that is defined as a flat tax is with no deductions, and then put a little twist in it and say, oh, well, no, we can't really defend that argument. Let's turn it around a little so that we've got this little hole here that we can say, oh, well, we don't really mean that kind of flat tax, it's this kind of flat tax. Ladies and gentlemen, it's smoke and mirrors. It is really wild extrapolations uncorroborated claims. There is no real identity here for the government's proposition to carry this evening. Let me also go back to the idea that I hope the Prime Minister doesn't have another word, another definition for the term need. Need is something that Canada needs. It isn't something that will automatically put 5,000 lawyers and high-income tax consultants out of work, which, by the way, the poor people that are going to be most affected would never be able to afford here. Anyway, no. What we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, is a smoke and mirrors idea that the government's got that just will not work. Canada is a sophisticated country. It has sophisticated social systems. It is not a fly-by-night zombie economy like the examples the government has used. It needs a graduated system. The provinces need a graduated system. A flat tax will not work because it doesn't need to be instigated in Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister, the member of government, the government, they have not only not proven their argument, they have in fact made a mess of their entire proposition. Ladies and gentlemen, it's up to you. We're sure you agree with us to vote against the proposition this evening. Thank you.
The floor now goes to our Prime Minister for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It dismays the government of the day that the opposition has felt to ignore the definition in debating what they wish to debate. The government still believes that there are 3 main reasons why Canada needs a flat income tax. First of all, the current tax system is too complicated and too complex. And that is an argument which the opposition did not choose to rebut in any way, shape, or form. They said, in fact, that we need the complexity, we need that sort of thing, whereas complexity somehow equals intelligence. Well, sometimes simplicity equals intelligence. The government then made the second point that the current tax system is unfair, it is unequal, that it treats different people making different salaries in different ways totally differently, and that a flat tax removes those inequalities. It means that no matter what income you make, no matter how you make it, no matter if you have kids, if you have adults, if you're supporting someone, if you're married or common law, you pay the same amount of taxes. And that particular change benefits the working class, benefits those who are in the middle class and those who are socioeconomically challenged. And finally, the third point, which the opposition also didn't choose to rebut, is the fact that several leading statistical agencies, such as Stats Canada, have shown that a flat tax can work in this country, can pay down the deficit, can allow for increase in spending, can allow for increase in spending based on population growth and inflation. The opposition didn't choose to rebut any of that either. This is from Stats Canada. This is not some fly-by-night organization from the East. For all these reasons, the government begs to propose.
Thank you to all our speakers. Now we'll invite Dean, our adjudicator, to come and deliver his thoughts for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, and members of both opposing sides. Cross-exam debate is always more challenging because, one, you're stuck answering questions for 2 minutes that you may not expect and have to be quick on your feet. And try to remember what you said and counter what the other person's asking you. So I want to congratulate the 4 members of the 2 teams on a job well done as far as handling the questions. It was a good flow all the way around. So Canada needs a flat income tax was the resolution tonight, and we had a definition, Canada being the Federal Income Tax Act, the base income tax, needs, requires because it's important, and a flat income tax, one tax rate for all corporations, and all income above one deduction for individuals. Now, there was an argument raised by the opposition that, well, we're sort of splitting hairs and whatever, but I mean, that's the definition. I didn't hear anybody on that side say, that's not fair. Madam Speaker, what do you think? So, too bad, you're stuck with it. That's how it is. So, just to start out that way. 3 good arguments as far as the government side, which is what you want. 1, it's too complex to administer the current system. 2, it's unequal with regards to individuals and those who tend to be better off financially. And the third was that it will spur economic growth. So we had those 3 arguments based off, and the government side started with the argument is too complex. It runs anywhere from 18 or 19 to $30 billion to run. You're involving countless lawyers, accountants, professionals to administer and run it, and that those are sort of a side comment was that those who can't afford don't benefit, or the rich get richer idea, and that the flat tax removes this. I love the idea, the picture at least, of a 1 postcard size return. And to counter that, I just wanted to note that both in the cross-exam and also in the opposition's comments, firstly, that the issue was raised, well, it's going to cost money in any case, and it's more complex. You've got a federal level and a provincial level, so you're talking a federal level. And the issue of a postcard size, I think I might have even commented that you might want to send that postcard right back, because federally, sure, you might be able to, but provincially, too complicated. 13 different provinces and territories, 13 different issues. So countering again the argument raised by the government. The issue about unequal, the issue was brought up by the government. Married people, single people, with children, without, full-time workers and not, sort of straightforward, so it works. Why would you, you're not dealing with stocks, bonds, benefits, and the like, so you don't need to be complex. It's a straightforward idea. And the other issue was brought up was the Carter Commission, and saying that a buck is a buck. I mean, it's a nice, good phrasing there. And I like the idea of flipping shares or flipping burgers should be the same across the board. So I'm picturing the McDonald's guy, and picturing the stockbroker or whatever. So the good imagery that way. And the opposition, again, brought up the idea that it is complex. It has to be complex. It's not that. One thing I would suggest, perhaps, from the government side, just quickly, to go through and say, well, you've got a simple tax form, a general tax form, you've got a tax form if you're a farmer or a business, 57 forms. I don't know what's involved, in fact, but just to say, that's how complex it is. It's crazy. Can you imagine all these? Which one do I use this year? I don't know. Just to sort of get the government or the opposition going, oh, okay, well, how do we deal with all of these things? Throw a whole pile of stuff at them, and they can't deal with everything at once. The government or the opposition came back, as far as the cross-exam, and asked, in addition to that, bringing up the issue of accountants and lawyers will be necessary, and that, as an example, in another country, Russia, was brought up. Well, they had a flat tax and the economy boomed, except it was actually oil economy that's secretly back there. So Estonia, they tanked. Poland, no flat tax, they didn't tank. So what's your argument there? So that, I mean, those, again, examples from the opposition, specific examples of specific Eastern Bloc countries, as it happens, that were brought up to ask about that. And in fact, the idea that the rich will pay as fairly as the non-rich will pay. The other issue, again, back to the unequal, whether it's unequal or not, and the complexity, the government seconder asked, how simple can it be if you need a computer or a tax professional to do your tax returns? And the idea of having the prop there was effective as far as that. There it is, baby, that's what you're looking at to deal with that. So it put it in people's minds specifically that is too top-heavy. I mean, the book's too top-heavy, the book's too heavy, the lawyers and the like are there. And using the term deadweight losses that the economists use to talk about tax lawyers and accountants, they just don't benefit the system as far as it goes. It complicates, it fills in everything.
Well, Law Society's calling me tomorrow morning.
That's okay. I had in my mind the thought of what Shakespeare said about the lawyers at the bottom of the ocean quote. I don't remember it exactly, but basically that's it. Also, the idea that you brought up in your own statements, in addition to the book, the fact that the federal government administers HST right now. And okay, it's a complex tax, and they are doing it, and businesses are submitting and getting the returns and whatever. So there we are. That's not a problem to argue against the opposition's point of incorporating provincial taxes into what would be a federal tax as well. So cutting down the opposition's concerns. For the opposition seconder, the cross-exam point was brought up, again, the Eastern Bloc countries. So there was good research done on both sides about not just Canada, not just the US, not just Europe, but Eastern Europe, Russia, other countries that use flat taxes or don't, and how it is affected. So in Eastern Europe, 27 countries with a flat tax, and in fact they've been dropping it. So it's not working there, so why would we even institute it here? You know, cut off the whole argument before it even starts. And Canada's always on top of good places to live lists, good places to do business in lists and the like. So, you know, the OECD type of list there. So brings that up. That was great. Now, the one point that was raised was, again, so why, so that we can go from number 10 to actually number 1 was brought up. So the other argument brought up in the opposition regarding flat taxes was, okay, you've talked about corporations, but what about small businesses? And the effect that that would have. They can't compete. So that's an issue. And also the idea, everybody hates lawyers tonight. Everybody, you know, put the lawyers out of business. So yeah, you might want to call the Law Society.
They're going to be calling me.
think of a career change for you. That's it. But again, but bringing up the argument again that there's no proof. Okay, the Eastern Bloc countries didn't work. There's no proof that Canada needs a flat tax. Bringing up the retiree, bringing up the Porsche owning $300,000 individual and the like. So putting again, sort of, they're going to pay this much and they won't be able to eat that well. They're going to pay this much, okay, so they can't fix the mirror on their Porsche. Well done. And again, bringing up again Eastern Bloc countries, Latvia in particular, problems with the flat tax, drop in employment, drop in pension rates and the like. So again, reinforcing that it's not good. So arguments from the government to counter those, and the idea that, oh, you missed what we actually said in the definition. So, you know, you didn't pay attention to that. Finally, opposition, summation. It's all smoke and mirrors, this whole term idea. We want a graduated system. A flat tax is not a good thing. Fix it so that it works specifically for all the provinces and Canada as a whole. And the government side saying, no, in fact, here are our 3 points, we said it. Here is what we're doing based on StatsCan information. So there's our argument. It makes sense. And again, a reminder to vote for the motion. So, in all, I did award the debate based on the content and the arguments to the opposition. The score was 68 to 57, and Gerry is the best speaker for this evening.
Thank you to our adjudicators. So I'm just going to award the. So I believe believe that the adjudicator cup has been awarded to you already. And then the result for the vote was 11 in favor of the government, and then 5 in favor of the opposition.